appreciate your attendance, and we hope and pray that the Lord will be pleased with the things that we're going to say today and do, and hopefully we could say it has been good to be here. The lesson I want to talk about is kind of similar to what I have talked about before, but sometimes I throw around names and I don't have a lot of information about what they're saying. And sometimes I'd like to have quotes and things like that to help when they're saying things that are in error, and then of course I bring it up here to present it to you. So I heard something by a man named John Hagee, and Mr. John Hagee is a pastor, and he is a false teacher regarding Jerusalem. And so you can see we've talked about some of these things before, and I used that name, but I thought, I better find something, and I found something. And there's problems going on today in our society, and it may sound political, but it is religious because people claim to be Christian. So we're going to find out that this is going to be kind of a test on that too, not just about Jerusalem. Well, Jerusalem is found, of course, in Israel, and so there's a lot of people that believe in premillennialism or millennialism, and there's no passage for that, and I can't deal with the whole thing today. I want to deal with him saying some things regarding Jerusalem. Okay, so on July 29th, 2024, on the podium of Christians United for Israel, he publicly said, quote, "Jerusalem is the epicenter of the world," end quote. And the context is being the existing physical or material Jerusalem. He also said, quote, "Jerusalem is the shoreline of eternity," end quote. He also said, "Jerusalem is where Messiah is going to return to the earth and rule the world with a rod of iron," end quote. Now what I'd like to do is take each one of these statements, and we're going to find out, is that what the Bible actually teaches? I don't see that. I don't understand that. And this is some hot material, because oftentimes people just believe that. They go along, but they're listening to guys like him who's a false teacher. He's a false teacher. And I'm about to show that. And we need to take this to heart, because if you believe in these things, this is what drives so many people to make decisions in their life that are destructive in more ways than one. Not just destructive with maybe their job or whatever, but with living and dying. And it's happening today because people believe teachers like this. And so in their decision making, whether it be at work or in their family or in politics or wherever, big time in politics. Sounds like a political lesson. That's not what this is. It's fundamental to living and the way we think about things, especially this lesson here, which he thinks he's speaking the words of God, and he's not. Okay, so the first one. Jerusalem is the epicenter of the world. That's what he says. Does he give us a Bible passage? No. Nowhere does the Bible say that. Okay? And we're talking about the physical Jerusalem. Okay? Let's go to John, the 4th chapter. I want to read what Jesus had to say when he met the woman at the well. There was a Samaritan woman at the well. And in John, the 4th chapter, I'm going to start reading from verse 20. Here's what the woman said to Jesus. She's talking to Jesus. Our fathers worshipped in this mountain, and you people say that in Jerusalem is the place where men ought to worship. 21. Jesus said to her, Woman, believe me, an hour is coming when neither in this mountain nor in Jerusalem shall you worship the Father. You worship that which you do not know. We worship that which we know, for salvation is from the Jews. But an hour is coming, and now is, when the true worshipers shall worship the Father in spirit and truth. For such people the Father seeks to be His worshipers. God is spirit, and those who worship Him must worship in spirit and truth. Not in Jerusalem. What is the focus? These people want to focus on Jerusalem. Their minds are still on the earth. For some reason, people have a hard time worshiping God with a spiritual mind. Their mind is still physical. And the epicenter of worship, this is the idea, worship of God, Jerusalem. This is what they're thinking. They were thinking that back then. The Samaritan woman talks about it. And Jesus says, no. They're getting it wrong. They think it's in Jerusalem. No, it's in spirit and truth. Well, can't you be in spirit and truth and be in the physical Jerusalem? Jesus said, it doesn't matter where it is. You got it all wrong. See, people are elevating. And that's the problem. This is what we're getting into. I'm kind of getting ahead of myself. So I just wanted to show, what does the Bible say? It's not in the physical place. No. True. Oh, of course there's worshipers of God. But they're not all true. Okay? True worshipers of God will worship in, here's the in place, in spirit and truth. That's what the Bible says. Jesus made the distinction. You're going to have to deal with Him. I'm going to have to deal with Him. Okay. Now, the writer of Hebrews directed his message to the Jewish Christians. Okay, when you read the book of Hebrews, it's writing to Jewish Christians. And he said, okay, well, I'll just read it here in Hebrews 12:22 if you're taking notes. But I'll just read it right here. But you have come to Mount Zion and to the city of the living God, the heavenly Jerusalem, and to myriads of angels. Now that's Hebrews 12:22. And he's writing to Jewish Christians. Now this is not who he's talking to, because the gospel went to the Jews first, okay? So, of course, they had the old law and all that. But these are people who were Jews, but they became Christians. They became Christians, okay? And so, he's saying they came to Mount Zion, to the city of the living God, the heavenly Jerusalem. Again, the focus is spiritual. It's not physical. It's not physical. Heavenly Jerusalem is spiritual Jerusalem, not physical Jerusalem. Heavenly Jerusalem. Heavenly is spiritual. They came to spiritual. That's invisible. The spiritual is the invisible realm. And so I got so many things going through my head about Jesus talking about His kingdom is not of this world, and people need to try and understand what Jesus is struggling to get people how to think in their minds. And it looks like we got people today that call themselves Christian that want to do the same thing that the people back here were doing. Israel, what they done wrongfully in the days of Samuel the prophet. Maybe we'll get to that. We'll see what happens. Okay. So that's how I would answer that. Jerusalem is the epicenter of the world. No, in spirit and truth. That's the focus. And we see in you'll find within also the spiritual Jerusalem, not the physical Jerusalem. Okay. Then the next quote he said is, Jerusalem is the shoreline of eternity. Okay. Physical Jerusalem today. So I'm not talking about the past. I'm not talking about the future. I'm just making the statement today. Okay? Well, why aren't you saying something about the past? Well, because in the Old Testament, the Bible uses Jerusalem as a shadow. We're not here to talk about shadows. I don't want to talk about that. I want to talk about what the Bible is teaching today. Okay? And so, of course, it's going to be future too. But I'm trying to get us to start someplace. Today, it is not the shoreline of eternity. Jerusalem is not the shoreline. The physical Jerusalem, that's not the shoreline of eternity. And John Hagee provides no scriptural passage for that idea. Well, I know they may go to someplace or whatever, and they go to pastor, well, what does it say? Well, it's not up to me to prove anybody's point. I just said John Hagee doesn't provide a passage. He doesn't have a passage. And even if he did, it's probably an assumptive or assumption type passage or something. But he didn't provide no passage. But we're still talking about this now. But the city of God, now listen very carefully, the city of God, the heavenly or spiritual Jerusalem, is the bride of the Lamb. Now I got to prove that. I just said that. And I will. We're going to it. But I'm trying to bring it to you real quick so you start to understand what God had in mind when he talks about the heavenly Jerusalem, the city of God. Who's he talking about? This is so important. It is the bride of the Lamb, and that's Jesus Christ. And as far as I know, people, when they get into Revelations, it's, the Lamb is Jesus Christ. There's no problem there. And so, okay, so the bride is made up of the saints. Okay, I'm going to prove all this. I haven't gone to the passage. I'm getting there. I'm just showing you. I'm laying it out. It's made of the saints, that's true believers. Saints means the holy ones or the true believers. That's what that means. That's all it means. And it's often referred to Christians. Okay? Now I want you to know, there's a lot of people call themselves Christian, but not every Christian is a true believer. All true believers of Jesus are Christians, but not all Christians are true believers. Just because I call myself a Christian. Jesus said, not everyone who says, Lord, Lord, shall enter the kingdom of heaven, but he who does the will of my Father who is in heaven. And there's a lot of people saying, Lord, Lord, even today. But they're not following him. But back to the lesson. The point is that the heavenly Jerusalem, from what I'm understanding, is the bride of the Lamb. The city of God is the heavenly Jerusalem. It's the saints, the true believers. That's who we're talking about. When you say, well, who's the heavenly Jerusalem? Who's the city of God? That's the people of God. Okay? Listen to the scriptures now. Here it is. This is found in Revelation 19, 7 and 8. Let us rejoice and be glad and give the glory to him. For the marriage of the Lamb has come, and his bride has made herself ready. The bride. The bride has made herself ready. And it was given to her to clothe herself in fine linen, Bright and clean. I know this is all figurative language, but it's trying to get people to understand something, okay? Bright and clean. For the fine linen is the righteous acts of the saints. That is the true believers. That is those who are Christian, the true believers. Okay? The righteous acts, and that takes care of the part where people think that you can go ahead and get to heaven some way or another without any works. Well, that means you're not going to have any righteous acts if you don't have any works. She's dressed herself appropriately with righteous acts. That is the people of God. That is the holy city. That is the city of, that is the New Jerusalem. We're going to get to that. But spiritual Jerusalem. The focus is not on the physical Jerusalem over. No, it's the people of God. Okay. All right. Now the next point, still dealing with this Jerusalem as the shoreline of eternity. Well, you better start looking at what the right Jerusalem, if you want to say something like that. In Revelation, John, the inspired writer, sees a new heaven and earth fitted for those in the exalted realm above. And he says, the first heaven and earth, the physical earth that is, passed away. Now this is, you can find out about where it talks about the new heaven and new earth. I think in Peter it was, because it passed away. Now I haven't gone to another passage here. I'm just trying to make a statement, and then we're going to go to the passage. And so, the new heaven or new earth is going to be a realm, if you will, a place for people to be fitted. This is a spiritual place for a spiritual Jerusalem. Okay? For the spirits of people. Okay? The first heaven and earth that passes away. It's gone. Okay. So, let's go now to Revelations 21. And here we will talk about, and I'm just trying to show you, here's what the Bible says about what I just mentioned. Okay? Let the Bible speak. That's what you should be listening to. Okay? So Revelations 21, starting at verse 1. We'll read verses 1 through 2. John, in the Spirit, of course, he says, "And I saw a new heaven and a new earth, for the first heaven and the first earth passed away, and there is no longer any sea. And I saw the holy city, the New Jerusalem. I saw the holy city, or the city of God, New Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from God, made ready as a bride adorned for her husband." That's the people of God. We just talked about that. This New Jerusalem, or this heavenly Jerusalem, is the same thing, because it's a spiritual situation. It's the bride of Christ. And it's come down out of heaven, made ready as a bride adorned for the husband. Now, this holy city, this heavenly Jerusalem, this bride of the Lamb, are the people of God. And we're going to show that even more so as we get more into this. They are the people of God, the saved. Not everybody saved. Even people that call themselves Christians may not be saved. This becomes very important when you're talking about the gospel message and how the people need to attend to it and to be faithful to the message itself in order to obtain salvation. It's the true believers, and Jesus is the Lamb. Okay? And what we learn about these believers, these true believers, the great promise that God has given to those about salvation. And you're about to hear it which you're not going to have this here on earth, as we're about to read, but the Lamb will gently and lovingly care for his bride. And so we'll continue the reading. Revelations 21, verse 3. And I heard a loud voice from the throne saying, Behold, the tabernacle of God is among men. Now the tabernacle, remember, that's the Old Testament. That was that tent. And this is where the Jews, the Israelites would go out there and they'd pitch the tent, and their God would be there. Okay? So he's saying, behold the tabernacle. So it's a figurative way of looking at things, but it's trying to help us to understand. Here's where God is. God's with somebody. Behold, the tabernacle of God is among men. That's the people of God, the holy city, the New Jerusalem, the bride, the people of God. Behold, the tabernacle of God is among men, and he shall dwell among them. And they shall be his people. And God himself shall be among them. And he shall wipe away every tear from their eyes. There shall no longer be any death. There shall no longer be any mourning, or crying, or pain. The first things have passed away. That's right. That old heavens and earth are going to pass away, because that's the first thing, and what comes with it. All these things that we've talked about. The mourning and crying and pain, it's all passed away. And he who sits on the throne says, Behold, I am making all things new. And he said, Write, for these words are faithful and true. And he said to me, It is done. I am the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end. I will give to the one who thirsts from the spring of the water of life without cost. He who overcomes shall inherit these things, and I will be his God, and he will be my son. And think about that. Judgment begins with the household of God. People that call themselves Christians. They might not even make it. People that call themselves Christians. In other words, we got to overcome these problems. Okay? God gives us all the information on how to do it. We just have to attend to it. And so that is what I would like to show us, what's going to happen with the Lamb and with the bride, and how God is going to take care of his saints. And there are not going to be no more problems, troubles, or whatever. It'll be just eternal joy and bliss with God in heaven. Okay, now let's deal with the next part. Jerusalem is where Messiah is going to return to the earth and rule the world with a rod of iron. Okay, there may be some things here that are said in the Bible, but I can tell you one thing that is not said. This man talks just like the devil himself. You remember when Eve was over there in the Garden of Eden, and the tempter to the devil tempted her with the fruit, and she said, well, I can eat all the fruit that God said except for one. And she said, if I eat it, I'll die. God says, I'll surely die. And he said, you surely shall not die. That's what he said. He used one word to deceive the people. This man says here, Jerusalem is where Messiah is going to return to the earth. To the earth. So he's talking about physical Jerusalem and a physical return on earth to rule the world that is from the earth. They believe this. When they talk about these things, that's what they think. Where's the one word that's not said in the Bible? The word earth. Nowhere in the New Testament, does it say Jesus, the Messiah, is going to return to the earth? I haven't found it. Well, if they find it, I'll start teaching it. I'll preach it. But this is how they deceive people. It doesn't say that. And it doesn't say he's going to rule the world on a physical earth. Nowhere. Where's the passage? Where is a thus saith the Lord? I don't have to produce it. That's up to them. They've got to produce it. Any passage that I have seen that premillennialists will do to try to prove that, most of the passages and all that is just assumptive, or just assumption. It's just their assumption. It's not truth. They just have an opinion, especially in the book of Revelation. You can make the Revelation say just about anything. It's a very difficult book, and that's why it's hard to deal with. And there's a few things you can get out of it. There's probably more things that I'm not going to get out of it. And I've noticed a lot of people, they don't get out of it. They have assumptions. They have opinions, but not truth, not fact. And that's the one thing we've got to try to understand, that what's driving all this, and what's driving a lot of people to be having all sorts of problems. Now I'm going to tell you what I believe this is really a test on, what the subject is about. It's about people that call themselves Christian. You know what Christians, so-called Christians, have done today? What they have done, they're doing the same evil and wickedness that the Jewish people, or the Israelites, if you will, in the days of Samuel. You remember what Samuel did? He was talking to those people, and what they did, not Samuel did, what the Israelites did, they asked for a physical king. Samuel was really upset about that. And I have some passages here. Let's see, 1 Samuel 8, 4 through 7. Then all the elders of Israel gathered together and came to Samuel at Ramah. And they said to him, Behold, you have grown old, and your sons do not walk in your ways. Now appoint a king for us to judge us like all the nations. But the thing displeasing in the sight of Samuel when they said, Give us a king to judge us. And Samuel prayed to the Lord. And the Lord said to Samuel, Listen to the voice of the people in regard to all they say to you, for they have not rejected you, but they have rejected me from being king over them. God is in heaven, and He is king, and they rejected that. They wanted to bring somebody or get somebody to be a king just like all the nations on earth. Doesn't that sound familiar? What these people are trying to do? Well, God gave them a king. Oh yeah, He did. God gave them a king in their rebellion. And He also said that, let's see here, we got a passage. He says over in 1 Samuel 10:19a, Then you will cry out in that day because of your king. This is 1 Samuel 8, 18 through 20. The first one I gave you was 1 Samuel 8, 4 through 7. The next one is 1 Samuel 8, 18 through 20. Then you will cry out in that day because of your king whom you have chosen for your... You see, this was going to destroy them. What they did was wrong. It was wrong for them to do that, and it's going to destroy them. And so he says, You will cry out in that day because of your king whom you have chosen for yourself, but the Lord will not answer you in that day. Nevertheless, the people refused to listen to the voice of Samuel, and they said, No, but there shall be a king over us, that we want to be like all the other nations, that our king may judge us and go out before us and fight our battles. And so God also said in 1 Samuel 10:19a, But you today rejected your God, who delivers you from all your calamities and your distresses, yet you have said, No, but set a king over us. And there's other passages that you have, like in Hosea 3, 9 through 11. He says, It is your destruction, O Israel, that you are against me, against your help. Where now is your king, that he may save you in all your cities, and your judges whom you requested, give me a king and princes. He says, I gave you a king in my anger, and took him away in my wrath. Well, they say they're asking for Jesus. But to me, they're doing the same thing. They want a king like they tried to make a king in John 6. They tried to make Jesus a king, a physical king right then. And they're still trying to make Jesus a physical king. They'll drag him out of heaven if they can to make him a king on earth. Like an old King Pharaoh. They're not in trouble with me. They're in trouble with God. And we are too, if that's the way we want to go. Jesus is in king right now. He's a king right now. And he is in heaven right now. And he's ruling right now from where he's supposed to be, in heaven. Let's put him back there where he belongs. And stop being physically minded and get spiritually minded. And that is your lesson on Jesus the King in heaven and John Hagee where he is wrong. He's a false teacher. He's not the only one. There's many of them out there. And we have to be able to identify that and get away from them and start following the Scriptures, what the Scriptures say about Jesus Christ, the King, and where he is right now. That is your lesson. And so if there's any who need to get their life right with the Lord, we're ready to help you. Come forward right now. We'll sing the song of the